Hi there, I'm Linda and this is Huttons Valley Permaculture. Well, the warm weather is really slow coming and I've still got to get my pumpkins into the ground. I do have some that I've already planted and I thought today we'd have a look at how they're going, but also get the rest planted. We've been having really wet weather and it's been hard to get out here to film. But we've got these beautiful little mushrooms coming up in the garden, which is a good sign that all the mycelium networks are starting to form in these garden beds. But there's been huge winds, lots of rain, it's been really cold. I've had half a tree fall down across my driveway, which was unfortunate. But I'll get that wood split and into the woodshed and we'll be right for firewood for next year. The flowers are getting a little knocked around by the rain. Well, the strong winds have nearly knocked over some of my dwarf sunflowers. It hasn't deterred others coming out. And various other flowers are coming out to join it. One of the places I've planted some pumpkins is up here on my top swale. There's plenty of space and I'd love to get some pumpkins sprawling around. I've been experimenting with growing some extra food in this area. So I've planted some potatoes here and threw in some pumpkin seeds just to see if I could get them growing. So far I've got some potatoes growing, but no signs of any pumpkins. Too much competition with the grass and the buttercup. Just along a little bit from those potato plants, I also added some pumpkin seeds into the cutout of my swale, just again to see if I'd get anything growing. At the moment, there's no signs of pumpkins, so they've either been eaten down by snails or they've refused to grow amongst all this grass. I did do my pumpkin potato combo at a number of spots along this swale, but at each spot I just find potatoes and none of the pumpkins. Another spot I planted pumpkins is at the end of my roadside swale. These little pumpkins look like they need a bit of extra nutrition to really get them growing well, so I think I'll add some duck bedding to them. Now, one place that's not lacking fertility is my former chicken brooder run. And I've got a number of pumpkin plants that are going really well. Now these plants do look a bit damaged because we've had hail recently, but they've got some new growth coming. So hopefully if we get some warm weather soon, they'll be really starting to take off. Also in this area, I've got a heap of volunteer tomatoes, which is great because I've yet to plant my tomatoes out in my garden bed. All that I'm going to do in this area is just get out my sickle and chop down these weeds and then use that as a mulch for my plants. Now I will be a bit selective with my chopping down. If there's a tomato that's about to flower and give me volunteer tomatoes, then I'm going to leave it and see how it all goes. But all the rest of this will make great mulch to help nurture these plants along. 2 years ago, I had my most successful pumpkin growing season yet. I had a volunteer that grew from about here and it grew around 50 pumpkins. And it was amazing. Unfortunately, it was during the pandemic and I couldn't even share it with most of my family and friends who were in lockdown at the time. But I really want to return to growing pumpkins successfully like that again because I really love to have them in the pantry. I have since developed this garden area, so I need to be growing my pumpkins somewhere else. Behind me here is my former chickens run. It's where I usually run them in winter because it gets a bit of sunshine and it's not a bad place to be. But this is also where I've grown pumpkins in the last couple of years, and I've also grown some rock melons as well. The problem with this space is that it doesn't get sun all day. It is shaded by these beautiful trees here in the afternoon, which is okay if we've got a hot summer because we could do with some shade then. But for example, last summer was really cool, so the shade really impacted on my pumpkins and I didn't really have a hugely successful pumpkin growing season. But because you never know what sort of summer you're going to get, I'm going to grow pumpkins here again. It's had the chickens fertilising it all winter, so I don't want to waste that. They're now in their summer accommodation where they've got plenty of shade if it is hot. And if it is hot, I'll have the pumpkins planted here ready to enjoy that weather. Now, one tree that has been a volunteer in this front garden is this tree here, which turns out to be an Australian native edible plant. It's a kangaroo apple. These beautiful purple flowers turn into a red fruit, which you can use to make preserves from, which I haven't done as yet. You've got to just harvest them when they're really red and ripe, because earlier than that and they can be a little bit toxic. It is a nice shelter for the chickens in winter, and they like to get under here in the cool, wet, breezy weather. But for summer, I think we can do with cutting this back a little bit. So that's what I'm going to do, and it will just give us a bit more growing space for the pumpkins. Here's one of the fruits starting to ripen now, although it doesn't look like a great specimen, but it goes a really deep red colour, and that's when you harvest it, and that's when it's okay to eat. Now, one area in my garden that I'm yet to develop is this area here. It will have 2 more garden beds in it and a path through the middle when I'm done. But I've got a lot of renovations of gardens to do up this end, so for this year I'm just going to leave this be. But I did think that if I just cut this down, get it under control, I might be able to get a couple of pumpkin plants growing in this space here. Over there I've got my potatoes, which won't be in all of summer. So once the pumpkin plants get growing, I should be able to let them grow all out there and have plenty of space to move, and it also gets heaps of sun in this position. So that's the plan. I'm going to grab my trimmer out, get this space cleared, do a bit of work up the top there, and get my pumpkin plants finally into the ground. First though, I've just got to clear out all the stuff I piled in here. There might still be something hidden in there, but it seems pretty clear. I'm going to go up the top and get that cleared, and then we can start trimming. There's not too much to deal with up here because the chickens have been in here. Just a few random things like this to throw out. I usually protect plants with that, and maybe a few logs and stuff. We'll get that moved. Just here I've got a length of hose to get out. Alright, well that was pretty easy. You can see why it was a really lovely place for my chickens to be in winter. Really lovely and sheltered. But I think if I just chop some of these small branches here, it'll give more space and light to any of the pumpkins that are growing through here, but won't hurt most of the tree. Okay, I think that's done it. I'm going to just clear this out into the chook yard, and then we can get started trimming. That tree is looking heaps better now. Just need to cut this all and put it on the ground. It'll be used as a mulch, and make sure I give plenty of light to these little pumpkin seedlings. So that's most of it down. I have left a couple of areas which I'll just do by hand because they're a bit too close to this chicken netting, and I have been known to chop through things, so I'm a bit more cautious these days. So I'll do that by hand. but that's looking heaps better. Now we'll get onto this bit. Well, that's great. I've been meaning to do that for ages, but the rain has really been stopping me. It's okay to get out in the rain and do some work, but filming is another thing. So I'm glad I was able to take you guys with me. It's sort of feels like progress when you can get this all down on the ground, use it as mulch, and then get some productive plants planted. I've planted these in trays quite a while ago, and as you can see, they're yellowing and they really need to get into the ground soon. So even though it's still a bit wet and wintry, summer's next week, so I really need to plant these out and see how they go. I've got some old wool that I've used to mulch things before, and it really kind of keeps things down, and you can identify where your plant is really well. So I'm just going to use that for the moment and see how it goes. Put his little coat on. The worms like to stay warm too. In you go, mate. Hopefully he's nice and snug there. I've just added the cut grass clippings around the edge of each of my little seedlings to kind of keep the weeds down a little bit more. But if we do stop all this rain and it becomes dry, it might help with the moisture retention. Now I've got 7 more plants to put in, which I'm just going to scatter around in this space, and hopefully some of them take off. I'll just make sure that that mulch isn't too close to the plant. Well, there's a sense of relief to finally get those seedlings out of the greenhouse and into the ground. Hopefully now we'll get some warm weather and they can really start to take off. I'm about to head off to look after my other 2 patches, some mulching to do with some of them and some duck bedding to put around the others. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Thanks so much for watching, and bye for now.